course, so that in these days goes without saying. And on and on and on. And in a way, it was really to protect themselves from being attacked and from their practices to be really kind of destroyed by those who were not interested in having that threat in their backyard.
In a similar way to somebody converting to Judaism and going through a long study period, if the rabbis had found their way through all these labyrinthian things, they probably would have been converted to being Kabbalists rather than having a congregation.
Probably, although this is not easy to access for...
Well, exactly the point. If they did enough study of it to access it, they would change who they were.
Right. So, I think there's a lot around all of these things that is built in order to kind of cover your tracks. But if you can remove the dirt that covers the tracks, there's actually very few steps and several very powerful practices. If you can go through the layers to get to the essence of it, it's actually pretty simple. But then we get all the palaces and all the layers, but I think that's a way of defense, of protecting it. Good. Let's move on. And we're going to look at 5 levels of soul. And you'll see, obviously, that the 5 levels of soul are connected to the 4 to 5 worlds. So, when the Kabbalists talk about levels of soul, I think in our idiom today, in the 21st century, we would call it levels of consciousness, of levels of awareness. And I think it was so progressive because we were all born in the understanding from the Judeo-Christian world, specifically, that we had a soul, and that our soul, that one soul, and we don't really it's kind of this thing out there, was that which, connected us physically to the non-physical world. I mean, I don't know exactly, each and every one of us, I'm sure, have that idea in the back of our mind of there's a body, there's a mind, there's a soul, and that's how it goes, right? And all of those are separate things. To the point where I often remark that we've come to understand ourselves as me, little me, having a soul. Right? I have a soul. Well, the I that has a soul is probably the I that is here. And the I that is here, suddenly, in its mighty arrogance, chutzpah, right? Now he or she has a soul. Right? So you have a soul. How is that possible? And what I often remark is, the truth is you get to look at it from the other way. You are a soul. And you have body-mind as part of being a soul. See the difference? Put it upside down on its head. But the ego self, the center, the ego self thinks it has a soul.
So is Asiya like the ego self?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's mind, intellect. Yeah, in that sense, the thoughts. Yeah, it's the conditioned mind, the ego, the separate sense of self. Absolutely. The Kabbalists, from the beginning, didn't talk about a soul. They talked about 5 levels of soul. So they saw that there was a progression. Right? There was not just a soul dumped into a body, but we were levels of soul. And you'll see how actually they see the souls manifesting. So, 5 different souls, organized also hierarchically, and connected to the 4/5 worlds that I just talked about. The first, and I think I'm going to go back to the previous diagram. Can you see the board?
Yes.
Okay.